We're going to start off by talking about simplifying rational expressions. So we're not solving anything, we're just simplifying. We're going to start off by talking about equivalent expressions, which is essentially what we're doing when we're simplifying. So for example, let's say I had three things. I have A is 2 times x plus 3, and we'll say B is 2x plus 3, and C is 2x plus 6. And my question is, which of these are equivalent? And if we look, this is really, we've done something like this before in previous years. You know that this, if we multiply this in, this is the same thing as saying 2x plus 6. So 2 times x plus 3 and 2x plus 6 are the same. So these two are equivalent expressions. If I had, let's say I had this one over here, 7x over 7, would that be equivalent to x, or would it be equivalent to 7? And if we look, we could say that we know that 7 over 7x, the 7's kind of cancel, and that would be just equal to x. So we know that A and B are identical. And let's say we had, we'll do the same one actually. So let's say we had 7x, no we won't, we'll do 7x over x actually. And is that equivalent to x, or is that equivalent to 7? And what happens here is the x's sort of, as we'll see in a second, sort of cancel with each other, and all we're left with is 7. So 7x over 7 is sort of equivalent to just 7. Now what do I mean by sort of equivalent? What I mean by sort of equivalent, let's go back to, we're going to talk about something called restrictions. So, when we have restrictions, what we're going to have is we're going to say, for example, if we have 7x over x, if x is 3, there's nothing special about that. You know, if x is 3, we have 7 times 3 over 3, which works out to, right, so if x is equals 3, we have 7 times 3 over 3, which is 21 over 3, which is 7. We're not too surprised because we said 7x over x is equal to 7. And if x is equal to minus 2, we would have 7 times minus 2 over minus 2, which would be minus 14 over minus 2, which would be 7. But if x was 0, we would end up with 7 times 0 over 0. And 7 times 0 over 0 is 0 over 0. And that's not 7. That's something different. And in fact, even if it wasn't 0 on top, right, if we had a number like 3 over 0, you can't divide by 0. So when we say we have 7x over x, what we're saying is we're assuming that the denominator is not 0. So the bottom cannot be 0. So let's go through some restrictions. So let's say we had 3x over 7, and I say, what are the restrictions? What would be a bad value for x? So could x be 0 here? It could. If x is 0, we end up with 3 times 0 over 7, which is 0 over 7, which is just 0, and nothing special about it. So there's no restrictions. There's no restrictions at all. This just works. Now over here, let's say we had 7 over 3x. Then what we would have is, we have some restrictions because x could be 1 or 2 or 3, but if x is 0, we have a problem, right? Because if x is 0, we would have 7 over 3 times 0, which would be 7 over 0, which is some undefined nonsense. So we're going to have a restriction, and the restriction is going to be that x is not equal to 0. That's our restriction. X is not equal to 0. Okay, let's do another example. say we had 7 over x minus 4. Now, could x be 0 in this case? So if x is 0, we would have 7 over x minus 0, which would be, over 0 minus 4, which would be 7 over minus 4, which is fine. So what can x not be? It turns out x cannot be 4. Because if x is 4, we end up with 7 over 4 minus 4, which is 7 over 0, and we're dividing by 0, so we have a problem. So our restriction here is x is not equal to 4. Now sometimes that may be hard to calculate, so kind of an unofficial formula here might be that for your restrictions, we could say that the bottom is not equal to 0. Or to be a little more mathy, we could say that the denominator, I'm not sure if I spelled that right, is not equal to 0. So for example, with the other one, when we had 7 over x minus 4, we could say, okay, we know that x minus 4, which is the denominator, cannot be 0. Bring the 4 to the other side, so x cannot be 4, which was the answer we had before. Example 4, so same kind of idea. So I would pause it now and see if you can figure out the restriction. I'm going to plow forward. So x plus 11 cannot be equal to 0. So x cannot be equal to, the plus 11 goes to the other side, cannot be equal to minus 11. So the restriction is that x is not equal to minus 11.